Hello and welcome to Stories Before Sleep. As night falls and the world grows quiet, there are stories waiting to be told. Before you sleep, let me take you on a small journey. There's a story that's been told for over 2,000 years. It's not just one story, really. It's 10 stories. 10 moments in history when real people just like you, faced something they couldn't control. They faced loss. They faced fear. They faced the weight of everything they thought mattered. Now, these aren't fairy tales. These are stories from the Buddhist canon, the actual teachings and accounts that were written down by people who lived in ancient India. They're stories about monks and merchants, about mothers and warriors, about people trying to make sense of their suffering. And there's something remarkable about them. They're not about winning. They're not about getting what you want. They're about something much harder. They're about letting go. I know that sounds strange, especially when you're lying here thinking about everything you're holding on to, your worries, your plans, your hopes. But that's exactly why I want to tell you these stories. Because these people, real people from history, they discovered something that might help you rest tonight. They discovered that sometimes the only way forward is to release your grip. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to do it. So settle in, get comfortable, and let me tell you about 10 lessons on letting go. Let me take you back, way back, to around the 5th century before Christ was born. You're in ancient India in a place called Savatthi. There's a monastery there and it's early morning. The sun's just starting to paint the sky orange and gold. And inside there's a group of monks sitting with the Buddha. They're listening intently. Some of them are taking this all very seriously, maybe too seriously. One of these monks, we don't know his name, which is interesting in itself. He's been studying the Buddha's teachings for years now. He knows them inside and out. He can recite the precepts. He understands the philosophy. He's mastered the meditation techniques. And he's become, well, a bit rigid about it all. He's started to believe that the teachings are the destination. That if he just follows them perfectly enough, he'll reach enlightenment. He's holding on to the teachings like they're the most precious thing in the world. The Buddha notices this. He always does. He sees people clearly without judgment, but with complete understanding. And so he tells this parable. It's simple, it's elegant, and it's going to change how this monk thinks about everything. Imagine the Buddha says that you're crossing a river. It's wide and dangerous. The current is strong. You can't swim across. You can't wade through. So what do? You find some logs, some branches. You lash them together and you build a raft. It takes time and effort. You gather materials. You bind them carefully. You work hard on this raft because your life depends on it. The raft is your only way to survive. So you get on the raft. You push off from the shore. And you paddle. You work hard. The river is treacherous, but the raft holds. It carries you across the water. Your arms are tired. Your back aches. But you keep going. And finally, after all that effort, you reach the other side. You step onto solid ground. You're safe now. Now, here's the question the Buddha asks. After you've crossed the river and reached safety, what do you do with the raft? Do you pick it up? Do you carry it on your head? Do you strap it to your back and say, "This raft saved my life. I must keep it with me forever"? Do you build a shrine to it? Do you worship it? No, of course not. That would be absurd. You leave the raft behind. You thank it silently, maybe. You acknowledge that it served its purpose. But you don't carry it with you. It would only weigh you down. It would slow you down. It would prevent you from moving forward into your new life on solid ground. The monks listening to this are starting to understand. The Buddha continues. The teachings are like the raft. They're tools. They're means to an end. They're not the destination itself. They help you cross the river of suffering. They help you understand the nature of pain and attachment and impermanence. But once you've crossed, once you've reached the other shore of enlightenment, you don't cling to the teachings anymore. You let them go. Think about that for a moment. The Buddha is saying that even his own teachings, the very words he's speaking, are meant to be released. They're not meant to be grasped and held and made into rigid rules. They're meant to be used and then released. That's a profound idea, isn't it? Especially in a religious or spiritual context. That unnamed monk sitting there, the one who'd been so attached to the teachings, something shifts inside him. He thought, all this time I've been holding on to the words. I've been treating the teachings like they're the truth itself, but they're just fingers pointing at the moon. I've been staring at the finger instead of looking at what it's pointing to. He felt something release in his chest, a tightness he didn't even know was there. It's like he'd been clenching his fists so hard around the teachings that he couldn't actually experience what they were meant to teach. This is such an important lesson for us, especially in our modern world. We tend to hold on to things. We hold on to beliefs. We hold on to the way we think things should be. We hold on to our interpretations of what's right and wrong. We build these frameworks and then we defend them fiercely. We make them into identity. We say, this is who I am. This is what I believe. And we carry them around like that monk was carrying the raft. But here's what the Buddha understood. Attachment to anything, even to good things, even to true things, even to teachings about letting go. Attachment itself is a form of suffering. Because the world is always changing. Everything is impermanent. And when we cling to something that's constantly changing, we create friction. We create pain. The lesson isn't that the teachings are false. They're not. The Buddha's teachings about suffering and its causes are accurate observations about how the mind works. But the teachings are a vehicle. They're a way to get somewhere. Once you understand what they're pointing to, you don't need to keep reciting them or defending them or holding on to them so tightly. In that monastery in ancient India, that monk probably went on to practice differently after that day. He probably still followed the precepts. He probably still meditated. But he did it with a lighter touch. He did it with understanding rather than rigidity. He held the teachings loosely like water in an open palm rather than in a clenched fist. And as you're lying there listening to this, as you're getting ready for sleep, I wonder what rafts you might be carrying. What teachings or beliefs or ways of thinking are you holding onto so tightly that they're actually weighing you down? What if you could set them down for a moment, not forever, just for tonight, just to see what it feels like to rest without that weight? Now I want to tell you about a woman. Her name was Patacara, and her story is one of the most heartbreaking and ultimately beautiful stories in all of Buddhist literature, because it's about grief, real devastating, life-shattering grief, and what happens when you finally let it go. Patacara lived in ancient India around the same time as the Buddha. She was born into a wealthy family. She had everything you might think would make someone happy. Beauty, status, money. Her parents loved her. She was their precious daughter. And when she grew up, she married a man from a good family. Everything seemed perfect. Everything seemed like it was going to be wonderful. But then life happened. And life, as you know, doesn't always follow the script we've written for it. She became pregnant. And as her due date approached, she decided to go back to her parents' house to give birth. That was the custom then. So she left her husband's home and traveled to her mother and father. She was excited. She was nervous. She was ready to become a mother. But on the way, she went into labor. She was alone with her servants, and the baby came suddenly. She gave birth to a son on the side of the road. And in that moment, holding her newborn child, she probably felt something like joy. She had a son, a healthy son. Her life was about to change in the most fundamental way. She rested for a few days, recovering from the birth. And then she decided to go back to her husband. She wanted him to see their son. She wanted to show him what they'd created together. So she set out on the journey back, carrying her infant in her arms. But something went wrong. As she was crossing a river trying to wade through the water, her foot slipped on a stone. She stumbled. And in that moment of panic, trying to catch herself, trying to protect her baby, she made a choice. She threw her son onto the far bank of the river. She saved his life. But in doing so, she lost her grip and was swept downstream. She managed to pull herself out of the water, gasping and choking. She climbed onto the bank. She was alive, but she was separated from her son. She was alone on one side of the river, and her baby was on the other side crying. Can you imagine that? Can you feel what that must have been like? The desperation, the helplessness, hearing your child cry and being unable to reach him. She found a way across the river eventually. She found her son. She held him close. And she continued on shaken, but determined to reach her husband. But the story doesn't end there. It gets worse, much worse. As she was walking through a village, a group of soldiers came through. There was conflict in the region, war. And these soldiers, they were violent and chaotic. They saw her. They saw a woman alone. And they attacked her. They assaulted her. And in the chaos and the violence, her baby was killed. Her son, the child she'd just saved from the river, gone. She was devastated, broken, but she kept moving. She had to keep moving. She had to get to her husband. Maybe he could help her. Maybe together they could make sense of this nightmare. She finally reached his home, and she found him. But when she told him what had happened, when she told him about their son, he couldn't bear it. The grief was too much. And in that moment, something in him broke. He walked away from her. He left. He couldn't face the pain. Patacara was alone. She'd lost her son. She'd lost her husband. She'd been violated. She was traumatized. And she was utterly, completely alone. She wandered. She didn't know what else to do. She walked through the countryside half mad with grief. People saw her and thought she was insane. Her hair was matted. Her clothes were torn. She was muttering to herself. She'd lost everything, and the weight of that loss was crushing her. But then she heard about the Buddha. She heard that there was a teacher in the region who understood suffering, who could help people find peace. And something in her, some desperate, fragile hope made her seek him out. She found him. And when she saw him, she broke down. She told him everything. She told him about her son, about the river, about the soldiers, about her husband leaving her. She told him about the unbearable weight of her grief. And she asked him, "How do I live with this? How do I go on?" The Buddha listened. He didn't try to minimize her pain. He didn't say, "Oh, it's not so bad." He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply listened. And then he said something that changed everything. He said, "Patacara in this village, alone, how many people have lost a child?" She thought about it. Many. So many families had lost children to illness, to accident, to violence. How many have lost a husband? He asked. Again, many. How many have lost parents? How many have lost everything they loved? And Patacara began to understand. Her grief was real. Her pain was real. But she wasn't alone in it. This wasn't a unique punishment. This was the nature of existence. Everyone loses what they love. Everyone experiences grief. Because everything that comes into being eventually passes away. That's not a tragedy. That's just how life works. She felt something shift inside her. She thought, my pain is not special. My loss is not unique. And that means I'm not being singled out for punishment. I'm not cursed. I'm just human. I'm just experiencing what all humans experience. And in that realization, something began to heal. She became a nun. She studied the Buddha's teachings. And over time, through meditation and understanding and practice, she learned to let go of her grief. Not by forgetting her son, not by pretending the loss didn't matter, but by understanding that clinging to her grief, holding on to it, refusing to accept what had happened, that was what was causing her suffering. The loss itself was painful, yes, but her resistance to the loss, her refusal to accept impermanence, that was what was destroying her. She eventually reached enlightenment. She became one of the Buddha's most respected disciples, and she spent the rest of her life helping other people who were grieving. She knew their pain intimately. She knew what it felt like to lose everything, and she could help them because she'd learned the most important lesson. She'd learned that the only way through grief is to stop fighting against it, to accept it, to understand that impermanence is not a flaw in the universe. It's the nature of everything. As you're lying there, as you're thinking about your own losses, your own griefs, I want you to know something. Patakara's story teaches us that grief is not weakness. It's proof that you've loved. And letting go of grief doesn't mean forgetting. It means accepting that everything changes, everything passes, and that's okay. That's just how it is. And when you stop fighting against that truth, something inside you finally rests. There's another story, another mother, another child. And this one, I think, speaks to something we all do. We all deny. We all bargain with reality. We all try to negotiate with the way things are. And this story is about what happens when we finally stop. Her name was Kisagotami, and she lived in the same time as the Buddha in ancient India. She was a young mother. Her son was her world. He was healthy and beautiful and full of life. She loved him with a kind of fierce, all-consuming love that only a mother knows. The kind of love where your child becomes your reason for existing. And then one day her son got sick. It started small, a fever, a cough. Nothing too serious, she thought. Children get sick all the time. They recover. But this time it didn't get better. The fever got worse. The cough became more severe. And despite everything she did, everything she tried, her son grew weaker and weaker. She called for physicians. She gave him medicines. She prayed. She made offerings. She did everything a mother could possibly do. But nothing worked. And one morning, she woke up and her son was gone. He died in the night. Her beautiful, healthy, vibrant son was dead. The grief that hit her was like nothing she'd ever experienced. It wasn't just sadness. It was a complete shattering of reality. Because in her mind, this wasn't supposed to happen. Not to her, not to her son. He was young. He was strong. He had his whole life ahead of him. This wasn't fair. This wasn't right. This couldn't be real. But it was real, and she couldn't accept it. So she did something that seems strange to us now, but which makes complete sense if you understand grief. She picked up her dead son. She held him in her arms. And she walked through the village, going from house to house, from person to person. And she asked them, "Do you know of any medicine that can cure my son? Do you know of any treatment, any remedy, anything at all?" People looked at her with pity. They could see that her son was dead. They could see that he was beyond help. But they didn't know how to tell her that. How do you tell a mother that her child is gone? How do you say those words? So some of them just looked away. Some of them tried to gently suggest that she accept what had happened. but she wouldn't hear it. She refused. She kept asking. She kept searching. Finally, someone told her about the Buddha. They said, "There's a teacher, a wise man. He understands suffering. Maybe he can help you. Maybe he knows of something." And Kisagotami, desperate, still clinging to the hope that somehow, some way her son could be saved, she went to find him. She walked to where the Buddha was teaching. And when she saw him, she fell at his feet. She was still holding her dead son. And she said, "Please, please help me. My son is sick. I need medicine. I need a cure. You're wise. You understand things. Tell me what to do." The Buddha looked at her, and he saw her pain. He saw her denial. He saw a mother who couldn't accept what had happened. And he didn't tell her the truth directly. He didn't say, "Your son is dead. You need to accept it." He knew that wouldn't help. She wasn't ready to hear that. So instead, he gave her a task. He said, "Kisagotami, what you're asking for, I can help you with. But I need something from you first. I need you to bring me a mustard seed." She looked at him confused, but hopeful. A mustard seed. That was simple. That was easy. She could do that. He continued, "But not just any mustard seed. I need a mustard seed from a household that has never experienced death. A household where no one has ever died. A household where there has been no grief. If you can bring me such a seed, I can help your son." Kisagotami felt a spark of hope. Yes, she could do this. She would find such a household, and then her son would be cured. She set out immediately. She went to the first house in the village. She knocked on the door. A family answered. She said, "I'm looking for a mustard seed from a household that has never experienced death. Has anyone in your family ever died?" The man looked at her sadly. "Yes," he said. "My father died 3 years ago. My mother died 5 years before that." She moved on to the next house. Same question. Same answer. "Yes, my wife died. My brother died when he was young." House after house, family after family. Every single one had experienced death. Every single one had lost someone they loved. She walked through the entire village. She asked everyone, and not one household could give her what she was looking for. As she walked, something began to change inside her. She started to really listen to the stories people told her. An old woman whose husband had died 40 years ago. A young man whose child had died just months before. A merchant who'd lost his entire family to illness. A farmer who'd lost his parents, his siblings, his wife. She realized slowly that she wasn't alone in her grief. She wasn't being singled out. She wasn't cursed. Death had touched every single family in the village. Every single person had lost someone. Every single person was carrying grief. And in that realization, something shifted. She thought, "My son is not the only one who has died. My grief is not unique. This is not a punishment. This is just life. This is what it means to be human, to love, and to lose." She went back to the Buddha. And this time she wasn't holding her son anymore. She'd left him. She'd let him go. And when she saw the Buddha, she didn't ask for a cure. She asked for understanding. The Buddha taught her about impermanence, about how everything that comes into being must pass away, about how clinging to things, trying to hold on to them, trying to deny that they'll change, that's what causes suffering. Not the change itself, not death itself, but our resistance to it, our refusal to accept the way things are. Kisagotami became a nun. She studied. She meditated, and eventually she reached enlightenment. She became one of the Buddha's most respected disciples, and she spent her life teaching other grieving people. She would tell them her story. She would tell them about the mustard seed. And she would help them understand that their grief, while real and valid, didn't have to destroy them. The lesson of Kisagotami's story is the suffering often comes not from what happens to us, but from our refusal to accept what happens. We deny, we bargain. We say, this shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. If I just try hard enough, I can change this. And sometimes we can. Sometimes we can change things, but sometimes we can't. And that's when we have to let go of denial and accept reality as it is. As you're lying there, as your mind is getting quieter, I want you to think about what you might be denying. What reality are you resisting? What are you trying to hold on to that's already slipping away because the peace that Kisagotami found, the peace that comes from acceptance that's available to you too, not by giving up, not by becoming passive, but by stopping the fight, by saying, yes, this is happening, yes, this is real, and I'm going to accept it and move forward anyway. Now I want to tell you about a man who had everything, and I mean everything. His name was Anathapindika, and he was one of the wealthiest merchants in all of ancient India. We know he was real because he's documented in the Buddhist texts, and historical records suggest he lived around the 5th century before Christ. He was incredibly successful, fabulously rich, the kind of man that other people envied. Anathapindika's wealth wasn't inherited. He'd earned it. He was a brilliant businessman. He understood trade. He understood how to move goods, how to negotiate, how to build relationships with other merchants across vast distances. He had trading routes that stretched across India. He had ships. He had warehouses. He had servants and employees and people who depended on him for their livelihoods. His name literally means feeder of the poor because he was known for his generosity. But his generosity came from abundance. He had so much that he could afford to give, and with his wealth came status. He was respected. He was invited to important gatherings. Kings and nobles knew his name. When he walked through the marketplace, people bowed to him. When he spoke, people listened. His opinion mattered. His presence mattered. He was important. But here's the thing about wealth and status. They're intoxicating. They feel like they mean something. They feel like they're real. They feel like they're who you are. And Anathapindika had begun to believe that his wealth and his status were the most important things in his life. They were his identity. They were his security. They were his proof that he mattered. Then he heard about the Buddha. There was a teacher in the region who was attracting followers. People were saying remarkable things about him. That he'd renounced his own wealth and status, he'd been a prince actually, and found something more valuable, something that couldn't be taken away, something that didn't depend on money or power or social position. Anathapindika was intrigued, but also skeptical. He was a practical man, a businessman. He believed in what he could see and measure and count. How could anything be more valuable than wealth? Wealth was real. Wealth was power. Wealth was security. But something made him go. Maybe curiosity. Maybe a vague sense that something was missing. Maybe he was tired, though he wouldn't have admitted it. So he went to see the Buddha. When he arrived, the Buddha was meditating under a tree. Anathapindika approached, and the Buddha opened his eyes and looked at him. And in that moment, Anathapindika felt something he'd never felt before. He felt seen, not as a wealthy merchant, not as a successful businessman, not as someone important or impressive, just seen, as a person, as a human being. The Buddha invited him to sit, and they talked. The Buddha didn't lecture him about the evils of wealth. He wasn't condemning. He was simply present. And as they talked, Anathapindika began to understand something. His wealth, which he'd thought was so solid and real and permanent, was actually fragile. It could be lost. It could be stolen. It could be destroyed by circumstances beyond his control. And his status, which felt so important, was actually dependent on other people's opinions. It could change in an instant. More importantly, he began to see that his attachment to his wealth and status was actually causing him suffering. He was constantly worried about losing it. He was constantly trying to protect it. He was constantly trying to increase it. He was caught in a cycle of anxiety and grasping, and he'd never really noticed it before because he was too busy being successful. The Buddha taught him about impermanence, about how everything changes, everything passes, and when you cling to things that are constantly changing, you create suffering for yourself. Not because the things are bad, money isn't bad, status isn't bad, but attachment to them is. Believing that they're permanent when they're not. Believing that they're the source of happiness when they're not. Anathapindika felt something breaking open inside him. He thought, all my life I've been building this empire. I've been accumulating. I've been protecting. I've been so afraid of losing it all. But what if I just let it go? What if I stopped clinging? What would happen then? It was terrifying and liberating, both at the same time. He became a devoted follower of the Buddha. But here's what's important. He didn't become a monk. He didn't renounce everything and go live in a monastery. He stayed a merchant. He stayed wealthy. But his relationship to his wealth completely changed. He began to use his money differently. Instead of accumulating more, he started giving it away. He built monasteries for the Buddha and his monks. He supported the Sangha, the community of practitioners. He used his resources to help people. And as he did this, something remarkable happened. He became happier, not because he was doing good deeds, though he was, but because he'd released his grip. He was no longer clinging. He was no longer afraid. He still had wealth. He still had status. But he held them lightly, like water in an open palm instead of in a clenched fist. And that made all the difference. There's a beautiful story about Anathapindika near the end of his life. He was old by then. He'd spent decades supporting the Buddha's teachings. And he was dying. The Buddha came to visit him. And Anathapindika said something remarkable. He said that he had no regrets, that he'd lived a good life, that he was ready to go. The Buddha asked him, Anathapindika, as you're leaving this life, are you sad to leave your wealth behind? And Anathapindika smiled. He said, no, teacher, I'm not sad at all. I gave it all away long ago. There's nothing here for me to cling to. I'm ready. That's the transformation. That's what letting go of attachment to wealth and status looks like. It's not about becoming poor. It's not about rejecting money or success. It's about changing your relationship to it. It's about understanding that these things are tools. They're useful, but they're not who you are. They're not your security. They're not your worth. Anathapindika teaches us something we really need to hear, especially in our modern world, where we're constantly told that more is better, that success means accumulation, that our worth is measured by what we have and what position we hold. But he shows us that there's another way, that you can be successful and still be free, that you can have wealth and still not be enslaved by it, that you can let go and still live a full, meaningful life. As you're lying there, as you're getting ready for sleep, I want you to think about this. What are you holding on to? What do you think defines you? What would you be afraid to lose? Because whatever that is, that's where your suffering is. Not in the thing itself, but in your attachment to it. And if Anathapindika could let go of his vast wealth and find peace, what might you find if you loosened your grip on whatever you're clinging to? There's a story about a man named Nanda, and this one is about something we all struggle with, even if we don't like to admit it. It's about vanity, about self-importance, about the way we see ourselves and the way we want others to see us. Nanda was the Buddha's cousin, his half-brother actually. They shared the same father. And that relationship is important to understanding his story. Nanda grew up in the same royal household as the Buddha. But while the Buddha eventually left to seek enlightenment, Nanda stayed. He became a successful man in his own right. He was handsome, charming. He had status in the kingdom. He had everything a man could want in that world, and he knew it. He was aware of his own attractiveness. He was aware of his position, and he was proud of it. When the Buddha returned to his homeland, after years of wandering and teaching, he'd become famous. People were calling him the awakened one, the enlightened one. He had followers. He had respect. And Nanda, seeing his cousin's success, decided to become a monk too. But here's the thing, and this is crucial to understanding the story. Nanda didn't become a monk because he was seeking enlightenment. He became a monk because his cousin was a monk. It was fashionable. It was impressive. It was another way to maintain his status and importance. The Buddha accepted him into the Sangha, the monastic community. But he saw what was really going on. He saw that Nanda was still attached to his vanity, still focused on how he looked, still concerned with his position and his image. So the Buddha decided to teach him a lesson. One day he took Nanda on a journey. They traveled together, just the two of them. And as they walked, the Buddha began to ask Nanda questions. He asked him about his practice, about his meditation, about his understanding of the teachings. And Nanda's answers were superficial. He was going through the motions. He was doing what monks do, but his heart wasn't in it. Then the Buddha asked him something more direct. Nanda, why did you become a monk? Nanda hesitated. He knew the expected answer, the spiritual answer. But the Buddha was looking at him with those eyes that saw everything. So he told the truth. I became a monk because you did, cousin. Because it seemed like the right thing to do. Because it's impressive. The Buddha nodded. He didn't judge. He simply said, come with me. He took Nanda to a high mountain, and from that mountain they could see for miles in every direction. The Buddha pointed to a village far below. He said, do you see that village? Nanda nodded. In that village. The Buddha said, there's a woman. She's the most beautiful woman in all the land, more beautiful than anyone you've ever seen. Her beauty is legendary. Kings have gone to war over her. Men have traveled across continents just to catch a glimpse of her. Nanda felt something stir inside him. He was intrigued. He was curious. And the Buddha saw that curiosity. The Buddha continued, that woman is nothing compared to the celestial beings in the heavens. The apsaras, the divine dancers. They're incomparably beautiful. Their beauty makes earthly beauty look like dust. And if you practice well, if you follow the path, you might be reborn in the heavens. You might spend eternity with beings of such beauty that you can't even imagine it. Now Nanda was motivated. This was something he could understand, something that appealed to his vanity and his desires. He thought, if I practice well, if I become a good monk, I'll be rewarded with beauty beyond measure. I'll be surrounded by the most beautiful beings in existence. That's worth practicing for. So Nanda threw himself into his practice. He meditated diligently. He followed the precept carefully. He studied the teachings. He was a model monk. But his motivation was all wrong. He was practicing for the wrong reasons. He was still attached to beauty, still attached to desire, still attached to the idea of being special and getting special rewards. The Buddha watched this for a while, And then he did something else. He took Nanda to a charnel ground. This was a place where bodies were left to decompose. It was a place of death and decay and impermanence. And there, lying on the ground, was a corpse. It was decomposed. It was rotting. It was covered in insects. It was the opposite of beautiful. The Buddha said, "Nanda, look at this. This is what beauty becomes. This is where all those celestial beings will end up eventually. This is where you will end up. This is where everyone ends up. The most beautiful woman in the world, the most divine being in the heavens. Eventually, they all become like this." Nanda felt sick. He felt disgusted. But more than that, he felt something shift inside him. He thought, "I've been chasing beauty my whole life. I've been attached to it. I've been proud of it. And it all comes to this. It all ends in decay and death. What's the point? Why am I so attached to something so temporary?" And in that moment, something broke. His pride, his vanity, his attachment to beauty and status, and being special. It all cracked open. The Buddha taught him then about impermanence, about how everything that arises must pass away, about how attachment to beauty, to status, to being special, these things are all forms of suffering because they're all based on a fundamental misunderstanding. We think these things are permanent. We think they define us. We think they matter, but they don't. Not really. Not in any ultimate sense. Nanda's practice changed after that. He was no longer practicing for rewards. He was no longer motivated by the promise of celestial beauty. He was practicing because he'd seen the truth. He'd seen that all his vanity, all his pride, all his attachment to being special and impressive, it was all based on illusion. It was all based on a misunderstanding of how the world actually works. He became a genuine practitioner, and eventually he reached enlightenment. He became one of the Buddha's respected disciples, and he spent his life teaching others about the dangers of vanity and attachment to status. There's something so human about Nanda's story, because we all do this. We all have our versions of Nanda's vanity. We all care about how we look. We all want to be impressive. We all want to be special. We all want others to see us as important. And there's nothing wrong with that exactly. But when we're attached to it, when we're clinging to our image, when we're defining ourselves by how others see us, that's when we create suffering. The lesson Nanda learned is this: letting go of vanity doesn't mean becoming invisible or unimportant. It means releasing the desperate need to be seen as special. It means understanding that your worth isn't dependent on how you look or what position you hold or what others think of you. Your worth is inherent. It's just there. You don't have to earn it or prove it or maintain it through vanity and pride. As you're lying there, as your mind is settling down, I want you to notice something. Notice the voice inside you that cares about your image. Notice the part of you that wants to be impressive. Notice the pride. Don't judge it. Just notice it. Because once you see it clearly, once you understand that it's there, you can start to let it go. You can start to hold it more lightly. And when you do, something inside you relaxes. Something inside you finally rests. I want to tell you about an old man. His name was Subhadda. And his story teaches us something that might be the most important lesson of all. It's about timing. It's about second chances. It's about the fact that it's never too late to let go and start over. Never. Subhadda was old when we meet him in this story. Very old. He'd lived a long life. And for most of that life, he'd been a wanderer, a spiritual seeker. He'd traveled from teacher to teacher, from philosophy to philosophy, trying to find the truth. He'd studied with many different masters. He'd practiced many different techniques. And he'd become cynical, disappointed. He'd spent decades searching and hadn't found what he was looking for. By the time he was very elderly, he'd given up. He'd concluded that enlightenment, that spiritual awakening, that whatever he'd been searching for probably didn't exist. Or if it did, it wasn't for him. He was too old. He'd wasted too much time. He'd made too many mistakes. He'd followed too many false paths. What was the point of trying now? He was living as a wandering ascetic in the region where the Buddha was teaching. And he heard about this teacher, this Buddha, who was supposed to be enlightened. Subhadda had heard about many supposed enlightened beings. He was skeptical, but he was also curious. And he was old. He didn't have much to lose. So he decided to go see the Buddha. But here's the thing, and this is important, the Buddha was dying. He was very old himself. He was ill. He was in his final days. He was surrounded by his closest disciples, and he'd asked not to be disturbed. He was preparing for death. He was letting go of life itself. Subhadda arrived at the place where the Buddha was staying, and the disciples turned him away. They said, "The Buddha is dying. He's asked for peace. He can't see anyone right now. Come back later, or don't come back at all. There's no point." But Subhadda was persistent. He'd spent his whole life searching, and something in him said that this was important. This was his moment. So he kept asking. He kept trying to get in to see the Buddha. Finally, one of the Buddha's attendants went to the Buddha and said, "There's an old wanderer outside. He's asking to see you. He's very persistent. He won't leave." The Buddha, even in his dying state, even in his pain, heard this. And he said something remarkable. He said, "Let him in. Let him come." The disciples were confused. The Buddha had asked for peace. He'd asked not to be disturbed. But the Buddha knew something they didn't. He knew that this old man needed to hear something. He knew that this was the moment. Subhadda came in, and he saw the Buddha lying there, clearly in pain, clearly dying. And he said, "Teacher, I've been searching my whole life. I've studied with many masters. I've practiced many techniques, and I haven't found what I'm looking for. I'm old now. I'm probably too late. But I had to ask, is there really such a thing as enlightenment? Is it really possible?" The Buddha looked at him, and even in his dying state there was clarity in his eyes. He said, "Subhadda, yes, it's real, and it's possible, even for you, even now." Subhadda felt something shift inside him. He thought, even now, even at my age, even after all my failures of the mort, after all the time I've wasted, it's still possible. The Buddha taught him then, not a long teaching. The Buddha was dying. He didn't have time for lengthy explanations. But he taught him the essential truth. He taught him about suffering and its causes. He taught him about letting go. He taught him about the nature of mind and reality. And as Subhadda listened, something opened up inside him. All the cynicism, all the disappointment, all the belief that he'd wasted his life, it all fell away. He realized that he hadn't wasted his time. All those years of searching, all those false paths, all those disappointments, they'd all been part of his journey. They'd all been preparing him for this moment. He let go of his attachment to being right about his own failure. He let go of his belief that he was too old. He let go of his cynicism. And in that letting go, he experienced enlightenment. Right there, in that moment, with the dying Buddha. The Buddha's disciples were amazed. They'd never seen anything like it. An old man, a complete stranger, achieving enlightenment in a single conversation with their dying teacher. After Subhadda left, the Buddha turned to his disciples and said something profound. He said, "Subhadda is the last person I will teach directly before I die. After me, there will be no more direct teaching from me. But his enlightenment shows you something important. It shows you that it's never too late, that age doesn't matter, that past failures don't matter, that what matters is this moment, this choice, this willingness to let go and begin again. And then shortly after the Buddha died, Subhadda became a monk. He spent his remaining years, and he didn't have many practicing and teaching others. He became known as the last direct disciple of the Buddha, and his story became one of the most beloved in Buddhist literature. Why? Because it speaks to something in all of us. We all feel like we're running out of time. We all feel like we've made mistakes. We all feel like we're too old, or too damaged, or too far gone. We all have that voice inside us that says, "You've wasted too much time. You've gone too far down the wrong path. It's too late to change." But Subhadda's story says something different. It says that it's never too late. That the moment you're in right now is the only moment that matters. That you can let go of your past. You can let go of your failures. You can let go of your cynicism. And you can begin again. Right now. At any age, in any circumstance. The Buddha was dying. He could have refused to see Subhadda. He could have said, "I'm too weak. I'm too close to death. I don't have time for this." But he didn't, because he understood something fundamental. He understood that every moment is an opportunity. Every moment is a chance to help someone. Every moment is a chance to awaken. And Subhadda was old. He could have said, "I've spent my whole life searching and failed. What's the point of trying now?" But he didn't. Because something in him, some deep intuition, told him that this was his moment, that it wasn't too late. As you're lying there, as you're getting ready for sleep, I want you to hear this. It's not too late for you. Whatever you think you've done wrong, whatever you think you've wasted, whatever you think you've failed at, it's not too late. You can let go of that story. You can let go of that belief about yourself. And you can begin again. Right now, in this moment, as you're lying here, you can choose differently. You can let go, and you can start fresh. That's the gift that Subhadda's story gives us. That's why it's been told for over 2,000 years, because it speaks to something we all need to hear, especially late at night when we're thinking about our lives, when we're thinking about our failures, when we're wondering if it's too late to change. It's not. It's never too late. Now I want to tell you about a warrior. His name was Pathasomarabhibhu. And his story is about something that might be the hardest thing to let go of. It's about anger. It's about the desire for revenge. It's about the way violence begets violence and how to break that cycle. Pathasomarabhibhu lived in ancient India during a time of constant warfare between kingdoms. He was a soldier, a skilled one. He'd been trained from childhood to fight, to kill, to defend his kingdom. And he was good at it. Very good. He'd won many battles. He'd killed many enemies. And he'd been rewarded for it. He had status. He had respect. He had the respect that comes from being a warrior who wins. But there was something else too. There was anger. Deep burning anger. And it had a source. Years before, when Pathasomarabhibhu was younger, his family had been attacked. A rival kingdom had invaded his village. And in that invasion, his family had been killed. His parents, his siblings, his wife, everyone he loved, they were all slaughtered. He survived only because he was away fighting in another battle. When he came home and found them dead, something inside him broke. The grief was immense. But it transformed into something else. It transformed into rage. Pure, consuming rage. He swore that he would avenge them. He swore that he would kill every person from that rival kingdom. He swore that he would make them pay for what they'd done. And he did. He became a warrior of legendary ferocity. He led raids against the rival kingdom. He killed hundreds of soldiers. He killed civilians. He killed anyone he could find. He was driven by his need for revenge, by his anger, by his desire to make them suffer the way he was suffering. But here's what happened. The more he killed, the more the rival kingdom wanted revenge on him. So they attacked back, and more people died, and more families were destroyed, and more people swore vengeance. And the cycle continued, violence begetting violence, anger begetting anger, revenge begetting revenge. Years passed, decades even. Pathasomarabhibhu had killed so many people that he'd lost count. He was famous now, feared, but he wasn't happy. He wasn't at peace. Every night he saw the faces of the people he'd killed. Every night he heard their screams. He was haunted, and the anger that had driven him for so long was starting to feel empty. It wasn't satisfying anymore. It wasn't healing anything. One day, he heard about the Buddha. There was a teacher in the region who understood suffering, who could help people find peace. Pathasomarabhibhu was skeptical. He was a warrior. He believed in strength, in action, in fighting. How could talking to a teacher help him? How could meditation help him? How could anything help him? But something made him go. Maybe exhaustion, maybe a desperate hope that there was another way. So he went to find the Buddha. When he arrived, the Buddha was meditating under a tree. Pathasomarabhibhu approached, and the Buddha opened his eyes and looked at him. And in that moment, Pathasomarabhibhu felt something he'd never felt before. He felt seen, not as a warrior, not as a killer, not as someone to fear, just seen as a human being, as someone who was suffering. The Buddha invited him to sit, and Pathasomarabhibhu told him from everything. He told him about his family being killed, about his rage, about his decades of killing and revenge, about the faces that haunted him, about the emptiness of it all. The Buddha listened. He didn't judge. He didn't say, "You're a murderer, you're evil." He simply listened. And then he said something that changed everything. He said, "Pathasomarabhibhu, I understand your anger, I understand your pain, but I want to ask you something. Has your revenge brought your family back?" Pathasomarabhibhu felt tears on his face. He said, "No, of course not." "Has it brought you peace?" the Buddha asked. "No," Pathasomarabhibhu said. "It's brought me nothing but more pain, more death, more suffering." The Buddha nodded. He said, "Your anger was born from love. You loved your family. And when they were taken from you, your love transformed into rage. That's understandable. That's human. But the rage has become a prison. It's keeping you trapped. And every person you kill in the name of revenge, you're creating more people like you. More people with rage. More people who've lost someone. More people who want revenge." Pathasomarabhibhu felt something break open inside him. He thought, "All this time I thought I was honoring my family by avenging them. But I'm not. I'm just perpetuating the cycle. I'm just creating more suffering, more loss, more families destroyed. My family wouldn't want this. They wouldn't want me to become this." The Buddha taught him then about the nature of anger, about how anger is like holding a hot coal in your hand, thinking you're going to throw it at your enemy. But the only person getting burned is you. About how revenge never satisfies. About how the only way to break the cycle is to let go, to release the anger, to forgive. Pathasomarabhibhu asked, "But how do I forgive? How do I let go of something I've held on to for so long? How do I release the anger that's been my companion for decades?" The Buddha said, "You don't do it all at once. You do it moment by moment. You notice the anger when it arises. You feel it. You acknowledge it. But you don't act on it. You don't feed it. You let it pass through you like a cloud passing through the sky. And gradually, over time, it loses its power over you. Pathasomarabhibhu became a monk. He spent years in practice, and it wasn't easy. The anger didn't disappear overnight. The memories didn't fade. The guilt for all the people he'd killed didn't go away. But he worked with it. He meditated on it. He sat with it. And slowly, gradually, he began to let it go. He eventually reached enlightenment, and he spent his remaining years teaching other warriors, other people consumed by anger and the desire for revenge. He would tell them his story. He would tell them about the cycle of violence, and he would teach them that there was another way, that you could let go, that you could break the cycle, that you could find peace. There's a verse attributed to him in the Buddhist texts. It says something like, "Better than 1,000 battles won by the sword is the victory of oneself by oneself. That is the supreme victory." What he meant was this: the real battle isn't with your enemies. The real battle is with your own mind, with your own anger, with your own desire for revenge. And the victory isn't in defeating your enemies. It's in defeating your own destructive emotions. It's in letting go. Pathasomarabhibhu's story teaches us something we desperately need to hear in our world. It teaches us that violence doesn't solve anything, that revenge doesn't heal anything, that anger, while understandable, while human, is ultimately a prison, and the only way out is to let go. As you're lying there, as you're getting ready for sleep, I want you to think about your own anger. Is there someone you're angry at? Is there someone you want revenge on? Is there a grudge you're holding? Because that anger, that desire for revenge, it's like a coal in your hand. It's burning you. And the only way to stop the burning is to open your hand and let it go. That doesn't mean forgetting what happened. That doesn't mean pretending you weren't hurt. That doesn't mean the other person was right. It just means releasing your grip on the anger. It means choosing peace over the satisfaction of revenge. It means breaking the cycle. That's what Pathasomarabhibhu learned. And that's what his story offers us. The possibility of letting go. The possibility of peace. Even after decades of anger. Even after terrible things have been done. It's never too late to choose a different way. There's a story I want to tell you about a woman, and this one is about shame, about judgment, about the way society labels people, and how hard it is to let go of those labels even when you know they don't define you. Her name was Ambapali, and she was real. She's documented in the Buddhist texts. And her story is one of the most beautiful stories about redemption and letting go. Ambapali was born into a difficult situation. She was the daughter of a courtesan and a nobleman. In ancient Indian society, that meant she was born into a stigmatized class. She wasn't respectable. She wasn't considered worthy of marriage to a good family. She was marked from birth. And as she grew up, she became beautiful, strikingly beautiful. And in her society, that beauty combined with her low status meant one thing. She would become a courtesan like her mother. A courtesan in ancient India wasn't exactly a prostitute, though the line was blurry. She was an entertainer, a dancer, a companion to wealthy men. She was educated. She was cultured. She was skilled in music and dance and conversation. But she was also owned in a sense. Her body was not her own. Her time was not her own. She belonged to whoever could pay for her. Ambapali became one of the most famous courtesans in all of India. She was sought after by kings and princes and wealthy merchants. She was beautiful and talented and charming. She had wealth. She had status in her own world. but she also had shame. Deep internalized shame. She knew how society saw her. She knew what people thought of her. She was a courtesan. That was her identity. That was all she would ever be. Years passed. She lived a life of luxury and degradation at the same time. She was admired and despised. She was desired and rejected. She was celebrated and condemned. And underneath it all there was this constant weight of shame. This sense that she was fundamentally unworthy, fundamentally damaged, fundamentally wrong. Then she heard about the Buddha. There was a teacher in the region who didn't judge people, who saw past their social status, who taught that everyone was capable of awakening. Ambapali was intrigued, but she was also terrified. What would the Buddha think of her? What would he say? Would he condemn her like everyone else? But something made her go. Maybe curiosity. Maybe a desperate hope that there was another way to see herself. So she went to find the Buddha. When she arrived at the place where he was teaching, she was nervous. She was dressed in her finest clothes. She was adorned with jewelry. She was presenting herself as a courtesan. Because that's who she was. That's what she knew how to be. The Buddha saw her arrive, and he didn't turn away. He didn't judge. He simply invited her to sit and listen to his teaching. As Ambapali listened, something began to shift inside her. The Buddha was talking about the nature of the self, about how we're not our roles. We're not our status. We're not our past. We're not what society says we are. We're consciousness. We're awareness. We're capable of change and growth and awakening. He was talking about impermanence, about how everything changes, everything passes, and that includes the labels that society puts on us, the shame that we carry, the identity that we think defines us. Ambapali felt tears streaming down her face. She thought, all my life I believed that I was what society said I was. A courtesan, unworthy, damaged, shameful. But what if that's not true? What if I'm more than that? What if I can let go of that identity? What if I can be something else? After the teaching, she approached the Buddha, and she said something remarkable. She said, "Teacher, I've lived a life that society considers shameful. I've been a courtesan. I've been with many men. I've done things that are considered wrong. But as I listened to you, I realized something. I realized that I'm not those things. Those are things I've done. But they're not who I am. Can I let go of that identity? Can I become something else?" The Buddha looked at her with compassion. He said, "Ambapali, you can. You already have. The moment you saw that you're not your past, the moment you released your attachment to that identity, you changed. You're already different. If you wish, you can become a nun. You can dedicate your life to practice. You can awaken." Ambapali became a nun. And this was radical. In ancient Indian society, a woman of her background becoming a nun was almost unthinkable. But the Buddha accepted her. He treated her with the same respect he treated all his disciples. And here's where the story gets really interesting. Ambapali had to let go of so much. She had to let go of her wealth. She had to let go of her beauty, or rather her attachment to it. She had to let go of her status in the world of courtesans. She had to let go of the only identity she'd ever known. But she also had to let go of something else. She had to let go of the shame. She had to release the belief that she was fundamentally unworthy. She had to stop internalizing society's judgment of her. She had to understand that what she'd done didn't define who she was, that her past didn't determine her future. This was hard, harder than leaving her wealth, harder than changing her clothes, harder than changing her daily life, because shame is insidious. It gets into your bones. It becomes part of how you see yourself. And letting it go requires a kind of courage that's almost impossible to describe. But Ambapali did it. She practiced. She meditated. She studied the teachings. And over time she healed. The shame didn't disappear overnight. But she worked with it. She sat with it. She understood it. And gradually it lost its power over her. She eventually became one of the Buddha's most respected disciples. She became a teacher herself. And she spent her life helping other women, especially women from marginalized communities, women who'd been judged and shamed by society. She would tell them her story. She would tell them that they were not what society said they were, that they could let go of the shame, that they could awaken. There's a beautiful passage in the Buddhist texts where Ambapali is described as being fully enlightened. And it says that she was radiant, that there was a light around her, not because she was beautiful, though she still was, but because she'd released the shame. She'd let go of the judgment. She'd stopped believing the story that society had told about her. Ambapali's story teaches us something we really need to hear, especially if we've ever been judged, especially if we've ever been shamed, especially if we've ever internalized society's judgment and made it part of our identity. It teaches us that you are not what people say you are. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not the labels that society has put on you. You are consciousness. You are awareness. You are capable of change and growth and awakening, and letting go of shame, letting go of the belief that you're fundamentally unworthy. That's one of the most liberating things you can do. It's not easy. It takes courage. It takes practice. But it's possible. Ambapali did it. And so can you. As you're lying there, as you're getting ready for sleep, I want you to think about the shame you might be carrying. Is there something you've done that you think makes you unworthy? Is there a label that society has put on you that you've internalized? Is there a judgment about yourself that you've accepted as truth? Because that's the thing about shame. We think it's true. We think it's real. We think it defines us, but it doesn't. It's just a story that you've been told, a story that you've believed. But you can let it go. You can release it. You can see yourself differently. You can see yourself the way the Buddha saw Ambapali, as worthy, as capable, as deserving of compassion and respect, especially from yourself. That's the gift of Ambapali's story. That's why it's been told for over 2,000 years. Because it speaks to something we all need to hear. We all carry shame. We all carry judgment. And we all have the capacity to let it go. There's a teaching I want to share with you. It's short, but it's profound. And it's about something we all struggle with. It's about perspective. It's about knowing what matters and what doesn't. It's about letting go of the small things so we can focus on what's really important. The Buddha taught this parable to his monks in ancient India, and it goes like this. Imagine you're walking through a forest. It's a dense forest. There are many animals. There are deer and wild boar and monkeys and birds. And there are also elephants, big elephants, massive creatures. And as you're walking, you see footprints in the mud. You see the small prints of the deer. You see the prints of the boar. You see the prints of the monkeys. And then you see something else. You see a huge footprint, an elephant footprint. It's enormous. It's bigger than all the other footprints combined. Now, if you were to measure all the other footprints, all the deer prints, all the boar prints, all the monkey prints, and add them all together, they still wouldn't be as big as that one elephant footprint. The elephant footprint contains them all. The Buddha said that this is like the spiritual path. There are many small concerns, many small worries, many small things that we think are important. We worry about our reputation. We worry about what people think of us. We worry about small slights. We worry about not getting what we want. We worry about losing what we have. We worry about being uncomfortable. We worry about being bored. We worry about 1,000 small things. But then there's the big thing, the elephant footprint. And that's suffering. That's the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of existence. That's the fact that everything changes, that everything we love will be taken from us, that we ourselves will die. That's the big footprint. And all the small worries, all the small concerns, they fit inside it. The Buddha's point was this: if you're going to spend your energy on something, if you're going to focus your attention on something, why waste it on the small things? Why spend your time worrying about your reputation, or what people think of you, or whether you got the promotion you wanted? Why spend your energy on those small concerns when there's this huge thing, this fundamental unsatisfactoriness, this impermanence, this suffering that you could be addressing instead? In other words, let go of the small things. Release your attachment to them. Don't waste your precious time and energy on them. Focus on what really matters. Focus on understanding the nature of suffering. Focus on awakening. Focus on the elephant footprint. Now, this teaching was directed at monks, people who'd renounced worldly life and dedicated themselves to practice. But it applies to all of us. All of us waste so much energy on small things. All of us get caught up in trivial concerns. All of us lose perspective. Think about your own life for a moment. Think about what you worry about. Think about what takes up your mental energy. How much of it is really important? How much of it is just small stuff? How much of it is like the deer footprints and the boar footprints? When there's an elephant footprint right there, we get upset because someone didn't text us back. We get anxious because we said something awkward in a conversation. We get stressed because we didn't get the parking spot we wanted. We get frustrated because the weather isn't what we hoped for. We get angry because someone cut us off in traffic. We get disappointed because our coffee wasn't hot enough. These are all real experiences. These are all real emotions. But they're small. They're deer footprints. And meanwhile, the elephant footprint, the fact that we're going to die, the fact that everyone we love is going to die, the fact that everything we've built will eventually crumble, the fact that nothing is permanent, that's right there. And we're not paying attention to it. The Buddha taught this parable to help his monks develop perspective, to help them understand what's worth their time and energy and what isn't, to help them let go of the small concerns so they could focus on what really matters. One of the Buddha's disciples, a monk named Sariputta, was known for his wisdom, and he understood this teaching deeply. He would often remind the other monks, don't get caught up in small things. Don't waste your energy on trivial concerns. Focus on the elephant footprint. Focus on understanding suffering. Focus on awakening. And the monks would listen, and they would let go of their small worries. They would release their attachment to comfort and status and being liked. They would focus on their practice, and many of them reached enlightenment. But here's the thing. This teaching isn't just for monks. It's for all of us. And it's especially important in our modern world where we're constantly bombarded with small concerns, where our attention is constantly being pulled in 1,000 different directions, where we're worried about likes on social media, where we're stressed about what people think of us, where we're anxious about things that in the grand scheme of things don't matter at all. The Buddha is saying, let go of that. Release your attachment to those small concerns, not because they're bad, not because you shouldn't care about anything, but because they're distracting you from what really matters. They're keeping you from seeing the elephant footprint. They're keeping you from understanding the fundamental nature of existence. They're keeping you from awakening. And here's what's remarkable. When you do let go of the small concerns, when you do shift your focus to what really matters, something interesting happens. You become more peaceful. You become less anxious. You become less reactive. Because you're not caught up in the small stuff anymore. You're not defending your ego. You're not trying to control things you can't control. You're not worrying about things that don't really matter. The monks in ancient India understood this. They would practice this teaching. They would notice when they were getting caught up in small concerns, and they would let go. They would redirect their attention to their practice, to their meditation, to understanding the nature of mind and reality. And as you're lying there, as you're getting ready for sleep, I want you to practice this too. I want you to notice the small concerns that have been taking up your mental energy today. Notice the small worries. Notice the small frustrations. Notice the small disappointments. And then gently let them go. Release them. Don't fight them. Just let them pass through your mind like clouds passing through the sky. And then turn your attention to the elephant footprint. Think about what really matters. Think about the fact that you're alive right now. Think about the people you love. Think about the fact that everything is changing. Think about the fact that this moment right now is precious and temporary. Think about what you want your life to mean. Think about how you want to spend your time and energy. That's the teaching of the elephant footprint. That's what the Buddha was trying to help his monks understand. And that's what he's trying to help you understand too. Let go of the small stuff. Focus on what matters. And in doing so, you'll find a peace and clarity that you didn't know was possible. Because when you stop wasting your energy on trivial concerns, when you stop defending your ego and worrying about what people think, when you stop trying to control things you can't control, something opens up inside you. A spaciousness, a freedom, a peace. And that's worth more than all the small victories and small satisfactions you could ever get from worrying about the small stuff. So tonight, as you're drifting off to sleep, let the small concerns go. Release them. And focus on what really matters. Focus on the elephant footprint. And rest in that awareness. We've come to the last story. And it's the most important one. Because it's about the ultimate letting go. It's about accepting impermanence, not just in the abstract, but in the most concrete way possible. It's about death. And it's about the Buddha's own death. This happened around the year 483 before Christ was born. The Buddha was old, very old. He was in his 80s. And he was ill. His body was failing. He knew he was dying. And instead of retreating, instead of hiding away, he continued to teach. He continued to move from place to place. He continued to help people. There was a man named Cunda. He was a blacksmith, not wealthy, not powerful, just an ordinary man who became devoted to the Buddha's teachings. And Cunda wanted to offer the Buddha a meal. He wanted to do something for the teacher who'd given him so much. So he invited the Buddha to come to his home. The Buddha accepted. He came with some of his monks. And Cunda prepared a meal. He made his best dishes. He wanted to honor the Buddha. He wanted to show his gratitude and devotion. But there was something in that meal. Some historians think it was spoiled food. Some think it was a particular mushroom that disagreed with the Buddha. Some think it was just something that his aging body couldn't digest. We don't know exactly what it was. But something in that meal made the Buddha very ill. After the meal, the Buddha's stomach began to hurt. He had severe pain. His digestive system was failing, and he knew what this meant. He knew that this illness was going to be fatal. He knew that he was dying. But here's what's remarkable. The Buddha didn't blame Cunda. He didn't get angry. He didn't say, "Why did you give me this food? Why did you poison me?" Instead, he told his attendant Nanda to go back to Cunda and tell him something. He told Ananda to say, "Cunda, don't feel guilty. Don't feel responsible. The meal you gave me is as important as any other meal I've ever eaten. In fact, it's more important, because it's the last one, and it's going to lead to my final awakening, to my final letting go. Tell Cunda that he should feel honored, not guilty." Think about that for a moment. The Buddha is dying. He's in pain, and his concern is for Cunda's feelings. His concern is that Cunda shouldn't carry guilt. His concern is that Cunda should understand that what he did was good and right, even though it led to the Buddha's death. That's compassion. That's the ultimate expression of letting go. The Buddha had let go of his attachment to his own life. He was accepting his death with grace and equanimity. As the Buddha continued on his journey, his illness got worse. He was in severe pain. But he kept teaching. He kept helping people. He kept moving forward. His monks were worried. They wanted him to rest. They wanted him to stop traveling and recover. But the Buddha knew better. He knew that rest wouldn't help. He knew that his time was ending. And he wanted to spend that time helping others. Finally, he reached a place called Kushinara. It was a small town, and he knew that this was where he would die. He told his monks to prepare a bed for him between two sal trees, and he lay down. As he was lying there, his monks gathered around him. They were devastated. They were losing their teacher. They were losing the person who'd guided them. They were losing the light that had illuminated their path. And the Buddha, even in his dying moments, was thinking about them. He was thinking about how to help them let go, how to help them understand that his death was not a tragedy. It was a natural part of life. It was impermanence in action. He said something remarkable to them. He said, "Don't grieve. Don't cling to me. Don't try to hold on to what's passing away. I've taught you everything I can teach you. The rest is up to you. You have to do the work. You have to practice. You have to awaken. My death is not the end of the teachings. The teachings will continue through you, through your practice, through your understanding." And then he asked if anyone had any final questions, if there was anything they didn't understand, if there was anything they wanted to ask him before he died. One of his monks asked something. He asked, "Teacher, after you're gone, who will we turn to? Who will guide us?" And the Buddha said something that was both comforting and challenging. He said, "Turn to the teachings. Turn to your practice. Turn to each other. You don't need me anymore. You never did, really. You just needed to remember that the truth is within you, that you have the capacity to awaken, that you don't need to depend on anyone else, not even me." And then as the sun was setting, as the day was turning to night, the Buddha let go. He released his grip on life. He accepted impermanence completely. He died. His last words were something like, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence." That's it. That's his final teaching. All conditioned things are impermanent. Everything that comes into being must pass away. And knowing that, understanding that the only thing to do is to practice, to strive, to awaken, not to waste time clinging to things that are passing away, but to use your time wisely, to practice, to grow, to understand. The Buddha's death was his final teaching. It was a teaching about impermanence, about letting go, about accepting that everything ends, including the Buddha himself, including you, including me, including everyone. But here's what's important. The Buddha didn't see his death as a failure. He didn't see it as something to be afraid of. He saw it as a natural part of life, as the completion of his journey, as the ultimate expression of what he'd been teaching all along. And his monks, after they got over their initial grief, understood this. They understood that the Buddha's death was not the end. It was a continuation. Because the teachings lived on. because they carried the teachings forward, because they practiced and awakened and helped others awaken. That's the final lesson. That's what Cunda's last meal and the Buddha's death teach us. It teaches us that everything ends, everything passes away, and that's okay. That's not a tragedy. That's just the way things are. We're all going to die. Everyone you love is going to die. Everything you've built is going to crumble. Everything you think is permanent is going to change. And the only way to find peace is to accept that, to let go of your resistance to it, to understand that impermanence is not a flaw in the universe. It's the nature of everything. And knowing that, the question becomes, how do you want to spend your time? What do you want to do with the time you have? Do you want to waste it clinging to things that are passing away? Do you want to waste it worrying about things that don't matter? Or do you want to use it wisely? Do you want to practice? Do you want to grow? Do you want to help others? Do you want to awaken? That's what the Buddha's final teaching is asking you. That's what his death is teaching you. That's what all 10 of these stories have been building toward. As you're lying there, as you're getting ready for sleep, I want you to sit with this. I want you to think about your own mortality. I want you to think about the fact that you're not going to live forever, that your time is limited, that everything you love will eventually be taken from you. And I want you to ask yourself, given that everything is temporary, how do I want to live? What matters to me? What do I want to let go of? What do I want to hold on to? Because the Buddha's final teaching, the teaching of his death, is this: let go of what doesn't matter. Hold lightly to what does. Practice. Grow. Help others. And accept that everything, including you, is impermanent. And in that acceptance, you'll find a peace that nothing can take from you, because you're not clinging anymore. You're not resisting. You're not fighting against the way things are. You're accepting it. And in that acceptance, you're free. So here we are, at the end of these 10 stories, at the end of this journey through history and wisdom, and the lives of real people who faced impossible things and found a way through. Let me remind you what we've learned. We learned that the teachings themselves are just a raft. They're tools to help us cross the river. Once we've crossed, we can let them go. We learned that grief is universal, that loss touches every life, and that the only way through it is to stop fighting against it. We learned that suffering often comes not from what happens to us, but from our refusal to accept what happens. We learned that wealth and status, no matter how much we accumulate, can't give us what we're really looking for. We learned that vanity and pride are prisons we build for ourselves. We learned that it's never too late to begin again, that age doesn't matter, that past failures don't matter. We learned that anger and revenge are cycles that never end, that the only way to break them is to let go. We learned that shame is a story we've been told, that we're not what society says we are, that we can release the judgment and see ourselves differently. We learned that we waste so much energy on small things, that we need to let go of trivial concerns and focus on what really matters. And finally, we learned that everything is impermanent, that everything passes away, and that accepting that is the key to peace. These aren't just stories from ancient India. These are your stories. These are the stories of every human being who's ever lived. Because we all face these same struggles. We all hold on to things we need to release. We all carry burdens we could set down. We all have the capacity to let go. And as you're lying there now, as your eyes are getting heavier, as you're drifting towards sleep, I want you to know something. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. You don't have to let go of everything right now. You don't have to solve all your problems before you close your eyes. Just rest. Just let your mind settle. Just allow yourself to be here in this moment without fighting it. Tomorrow you can practice. Tomorrow you can begin to let go of one small thing. Tomorrow you can take one step on this path. But tonight, just rest. You've listened to these stories. You've heard these teachings. You've opened yourself to these ideas. That's enough. That's more than enough. You're doing the best you can. And that's enough. Your struggles are not wasted. They're part of your story. Just like the struggles of Patacara and Kisagotami and Anathapindika and all the others were part of theirs. You're not alone in this. Millions of people across thousands of years have walked this path, and they've found peace. And so can you. So for now, just rest. Let your body relax. Let your mind quiet. Let yourself drift. And know that you're safe. You're held. You're exactly where you need to be. Sleep well. You've earned it.